Imagine if you, driven by curiosity or necessity, decided to explore beyond the familiar. Imagine if this simple gesture took you to a place where shadows whisper secrets and daylight never seems to arrive. This is the invitation to an adventure into the limits of the inexplicable, where each step can reveal both wonders and horrors. Before we delve into this mystery, let's take care of our safety. Activate the channel's bell so you don't miss any details. Subscribe so you never get lost in our mysterious ways. And after watching the video, comment to tell us you're safe. Get ready. What you are about to see challenges the line between reality and nightmare. Together, we will explore whether it is possible to escape unscathed when the unthinkable unfolds under the cover of night. Mark, who had gone out in search of firewood, finds himself lost at dusk. The trails, once familiar and welcoming in the daylight, now twist and fork strangely in the settling gloom. Your footsteps echo among the ancient trees, giving the impression that the forest is attentive, listening, waiting. As the sun disappears below the horizon, the shadows lengthen and thicken, becoming specters dancing at the edges of Mark's vision. He tries to find his way around, but realizes that the path he came from has disappeared, leaving him hopelessly lost in a place that seems to bend reality itself. The fog begins to form, low and persistent, swallowing the ground and obscuring the trails. The air becomes colder, and an oppressive silence takes over the room, so intense that the sound of your own breathing seems like a rumble. Mark then realizes that the natural sounds of the forest, the birds singing, the insects buzzing, have disappeared. Even the wind withheld its breath. Suddenly, through the fog, Mark sees strange contours. Large, motionless shapes emerge like specters. As you get closer, the fog partially dissipates and reveals old train cars, corroded by time, arranged in a yard that shouldn't be there. Each carriage tells stories of a forgotten era, with its peeling paintwork and broken windows. Intrigued and driven by a mixture of curiosity and desperation, Mark enters the courtyard. The carriages are arranged almost ritualistically around a central space, where an old station clock lies with its hand stopped, as if time had actually stopped there. With each step Mark takes on the rusty tracks, the silence seems to intensify, and he feels a growing sensation of being watched. The surrounding forest seems to breathe a slow, heavy breath, pressing against the edges of reality. While exploring the misty courtyard, Mark comes across a sinister-looking coal wagon. Its corroded structure, painted with shadows and silence, seems to hide ancient secrets. With a hesitant push, he opens the heavy metal door, which creaks painfully. The interior of the carriage reveals a disturbing collection. Porcelain dolls lined up on shelves, each with piercing eyes that seem to watch your every move. The painted features are eerily realistic, and an air of unease grows as he progresses. Further ahead, old photographs hanging on the wall capture Mark's gaze. The images show people with terrified expressions, as if they had been captured at the height of their terror. The disturbing detail is how clearly these faces stare at him, begging for a salvation that never came. The atmosphere in the carriage becomes even heavier, a mixture of dust and despair filling the air, making breathing a chore. In the center of the space, under a lamp that sways with the moving air, a cloth-covered table holds an old notebook. Mark, with curiosity fighting fear, opens the notebook to find a chilling message on the center page. "Welcome to my home." These words, written in crooked handwriting, seem to pulse with a veiled threat, intensifying the feeling that something or someone still resides in this abandoned place. Suddenly, a faint whisper rises from the silence, a ghostly melody that seems to emanate from the very walls of the carriage. Mark turns quickly, his heart beating wildly, but there is no one but him. The feeling of being watched is now suffocating, with every shadow and every echo seeming to carry voices of the souls captured in the photographs and dolls. Determined to discover more, Mark approaches the objects again. Upon examining a doll more closely, he notices something shocking. A single glass tear runs down its porcelain face. This impossible detail makes fear mix with fascination. Needing to understand the secrets kept in the carriage, he decides to investigate every corner, despite the fear that advises him to flee. With each step taken, the mystery deepens, promising to reveal truths that perhaps will be better left hidden in the dark. Mark has barely had time to get used to the strange atmosphere of the courtyard when, suddenly, a figure emerges from the shadows of the distant carriages. A tall, thin man, with a posture that mixes elegance and threat, approaches slowly. His movements are fluid, almost as if he is gliding over the mist that still covers the ground. His features are sharp, and a sinister smile slowly unfolds across his lips, a smile that promises not welcome but domination. "Ah, a visitor," he says, his voice soft but filled with palpable malevolence. "I wasn't expecting company tonight." His speech is calm, but each word carries a weight that seems to hold Mark in place. The man extends his arms, as if presenting his dominance, his eyes shining with a mix of madness and control. Trying to retreat, Mark feels an invisible force that paralyzes his actions. The man continues, his voice becoming a whisper that seems to penetrate directly into Mark's mind. "You might be wondering where you are," he murmurs, taking a step forward. "I see that you fit perfectly into the needs of my collection." His eyes roam over Mark, evaluating him as if he were a mere piece on his grotesque chessboard. The air becomes even colder, the humidity of the night intensifying, as if the atmosphere itself bows to the presence of man. Mark tries to speak, tries to scream, but his voice is lost in a weak whisper. Fear consumes him. His legs shake, and his mind desperately searches for a way out. The psychopath smiles, relishing the terror his gaze inflicts. "The night has just begun," he whispers, "and I promise it will be truly memorable." As the psychopath approaches, the surrounding scenery seems to change. The outlines of the carriages distort, and the shadows move chaotically. Mark realizes, horrified, that the space between him and the psychopath is rapidly decreasing, not through physical movement, but as if the world itself was bending to the man's will. "There's no way out," says the psychopath, his voice almost caring. "No one leaves my domain without my permission." Desperation dominates Mark, a deep agony involving him. Every attempt to move feels futile, every breath a battle. Looking around, he desperately searches for something to defend himself or an escape route. But the place is a maze of deception and shadows, each potential path taking him deeper in a territory controlled by the psychopath. In this moment of extreme panic, Mark realizes that his only chance of survival may lie not in fleeing, but in confronting the terror before him. Gathering every ounce of courage, he faces the psychopath, trying to find some weakness, some trace of humanity in that being who looks more like a specter than a man. However, what he finds in the psychopath's eyes is only a reflection of his own agony, a mirror of despair that seems to condemn him to an eternity of fear and submission. Mark regains consciousness in a place that seems like a reliquary of the past, a locomotive cabin where time seems to have stopped. The light from the lamp flickers, casting dancing shadows that transform the small cabin into a nightmare scenario. Facing him is the psychopath, who with a sadistic smile, plays with a large coal shovel in his hands. "You will become part of my permanent collection," threatens the man, with a voice that mixes promise and venom. The furnace is ready to receive new fuel. The tension in the air is palpable, but Mark, although still disoriented from the blackout, realizes that this may be his only chance to escape. Your heart beats fast, pumping a mixture of adrenaline and terror that clears your mind into a sharp focus of survival. When the psychopath turns momentarily to stoke the fiery furnace, Mark sees his opportunity. With quick, desperate movements, he grabs a metal shovel that rests neglected next to the door. In a fluid movement, born of pure survival instinct, Mark attacks, using the shovel as a weapon. The blow is accurate, hitting the psychopath in the head, who falls stunned but not completely incapacitated. Knowing that time is short, Mark does not hesitate. He runs out of the cabin, launching himself into the forest that is now beginning to be illuminated by the first lights of dawn. The forest, a maze of shadows and indistinct shapes beneath the morning mist, seems to conspire against him. Branches cling to his clothes, roots threaten to trip him with every step, and the sound of Mark's own heavy steps echo like war drums. He doesn't dare look back, but the sound of frantic footsteps behind him indicates that the psychopath has recovered and is in pursuit. Mark runs, the cold morning air cutting into his lungs like sheets of ice. Every breath is a mix of pain and determination. He knows he can't stop, not now that freedom is so close, yet so unattainable. Behind him, the pursuer's footsteps seem to gain ground, a constant reminder of the danger that still follows him closely. As he runs, the terrain becomes steeper and more uneven, forcing Mark to make quick and risky choices. In a desperate decision, he throws himself down a steep slope, rolling and sliding through the damp earth and dead leaves. The impact is brutal, but the adrenaline stops him from feeling most of the pain. He stands up quickly, ignoring the scratches and bruises that now adorn his body. Finally, after what seems like an eternity, he emerges from the density of the forest, finding himself on the side of a deserted road. The sun, now a little higher in the sky, offers a promise of safety. Exhausted but fueled by a final burst of energy, Mark runs towards the road, each step taking him away from the terror he left behind. For now, he is safe, but the memory of that desperate escape will stay with him forever, a constant reminder of a night he almost became part of a macabre collection. Mark wakes up in a completely different environment. He is in a hospital, under intense lights and surrounded by the constant sound of machines monitoring his condition. A nurse notices that he is conscious and approaches him with a smile, explaining that he was found unconscious and rescued during a huge forest fire. Confusion grips Mark as he tries to understand how it all happened. He remembers running from the psychopath, the sounds of pursuit in the morning mist, but it all seems distant and fragmented. Watching the news on the television in his room, he sees reports about the fire that almost devastated the area where he was. The images show firefighters fighting the flames and mention that he was the only person rescued from the scene, which makes him reflect on how close he was to a greater tragedy. Little by little, the memories begin to fall into place, but with them comes exhaustion and a persistent fear. Mark wonders if the psychopath has been captured or if he is still free, a concern that leaves him uneasy. The possibility that the man is still on the loose and the idea that he could strike again is terrifying. These thoughts are interrupted by the entry of a police officer and a detective into the room. They introduce themselves and explain that they came to collect their statement about what happened in the forest. Mark understands that this is the time to help with the investigation, telling everything he remembers so that they can work on capturing the psychopath. As he narrates the events, each detail told helps to alleviate some of the weight of the trauma, although the fear that the attacker will return continues to echo in his mind. Sharing your experience is a relief and a burden at the same time. Talking about the incident helps you process what you experienced, but it also relives the terror of the moments you experienced. Mark knows that completely overcoming this experience will take time, and that although he survived physically, the fight to regain his peace of mind is just beginning. He is determined to do everything he can to ensure that no one else suffers at the hands of the man who almost destroyed him. Recovering in a hospital, Mark lives days of apparent safety, interrupted by therapies and exams. However, a whispering voice from the next bed breaks this calm with threatening words. "Well, no one touches my firewood." The voice is undoubtedly that of the psychopath. Terror engulfs Mark again as he realizes that danger is closer than ever, perhaps within arm's reach. The hospital, which should be a sanctuary, turns into an echo chamber for her deepest fears. Mark begins to distrust everyone around him. Every shadow seems to hide a threat, each look a hidden intention. Paranoia grows, becoming almost unbearable. He feels watched, chased inside his own hospital room, a place where privacy becomes exposure. Your state of alert is constant. The night brings with it deeper shadows, and the storm outside seems to conspire with your fears, banging against the windows like an ominous warning. Determined to face his torment, Mark waits for complete darkness. With his heart beating at a frantic pace, he drags himself down the silent corridor, guided by the echo of the whispers that disturb his rest. Arriving at the source of the sound, Mark prepares for the final confrontation, ready to face the psychopath and end the cycle of terror. He grabs the handle, takes a deep breath, and pushes the door open with a mixture of fear and determination. In this moment, he not only fights for his life, but also to regain the peace that was brutally ripped from him. The confrontation in the hospital, under the shadow of the storm, promises to be decisive, marking the end of his agony or the beginning of an endless nightmare. Recovering in hospital, Mark lives days of apparent safety, interrupted only by therapies and exams. However, the tranquility is abruptly broken by a whispering voice from the next bed. Terror reinvades Mark with an overwhelming intensity as he realizes that the danger is closer than it has ever been. The hospital, which should be a refuge, turns into an echo chamber for Mark's deepest fears. He begins to distrust everyone around him. Every shadow seems to hide a lethal threat. Every look exchanged, a conspiracy. Paranoia grows, becoming almost unbearable. He feels persecuted and watched inside his own hospital room, a place where privacy turns into claustrophobia. The night becomes an ally to his fears, bringing with it thicker shadows as a furious storm rages outside. It's banging against the windows, sounding like a harbinger of doom. Determined to face the torment that gives him no rest, Mark waits for the darkness to deepen completely. His heart beats at a frantic pace as he shuffles down the silent hallway, guided by the echo of the ominous whispers that disturb his rest. Upon reaching the source of the sound, Mark prepares for the final confrontation, ready to face the psychopath and put an end to the cycle of terror. He grips the handle, takes a deep breath, and pushes the door open with a mixture of fear and fierce determination. At this moment, he is not only fighting for his life, but also to regain the peace that was brutally ripped away from him. The confrontation in the hospital, under the cover of the storm, becomes the stage for a decisive duel. As the door opens, the psychopath's sinister voice echoes, intertwining with the wind of the storm. "No one touches my firewood, and no one escapes."